Very good evening to you. I am Pearson Bowen. Scotiabank is cutting 1,500 jobs, mainly in Canada, and closing 120 branches throughout the Caribbean. However, local Scotiabank officials say it is not immediately known what impact this will have on the bank's operations here. Ryan Broom has more on this story.
This is the footage of Scotiabank's Broad Street branch, which has direct connections to its head offices in Canada. It has not been affected by developments in the north. Barbados officials say they are not aware of any local branch closures at this time, as they monitor developments in Ottawa. Senior marketing manager with Scotiabank Barbados, Lisa Cole, says the bank does not yet have detailed information on what local impact could result. She also says that over the coming months, as the bank moves forward, they will continue to provide employees and customers with more information. Meanwhile, the bank's head office in Canada has said that the move is intended to reduce head office staff and eliminate some of its international branches. The exercise will cost about $450 million. The bank says it will close 35 of its 200 branches in the Caribbean, and out of the 1,500 total layoffs, about 500 will come from its international operations. Chief Executive Officer of Scotiabank, Brian Porter, has said that Scotia is simply overbranched in some countries and that the bank needs to size the network to meet the economic realities of the economies. He says while the bank's revenue growth has been encouraging outside of Canada, profits have not jumped as much as he would like. Scotiabank attributes the closure of the Caribbean branches to the prolonged economic recovery and continued uncertain outlook. The bank also says it has started restructuring initiatives to improve the speed and quality of service it provides to its customers while reducing costs. Ryan Broom, CBC News.
The Ministry of Education is being called on to intervene at the Alma Paris School in an effort to improve deteriorating working relations between the teachers and the principal. President of the Barbados Union of Teachers, Pedro Shepherd, says the matter has reached boiling point with teachers who are angry and frustrated. Speaking to the media at the union's Mary Hill headquarters this afternoon, after meeting close to a dozen teachers, Mr. Shepherd said discipline at the school has rapidly deteriorated. He accused the principal, Valdez Francis, of not keeping a tight rein on the institution. The teachers also claim that Mr. Francis unilaterally changed the timetable and suspended traditional seasonal programs like those held at Independence and Valentine's.
The school has to be pulled back. The ministry has a responsibility to the 165 students at Alma Paris School and to the 17 members of staff to provide a safe environment so that teaching and learning can take place. What currently exists at Alma Paris School is certainly not that, and it cannot be allowed to continue much longer without an intervention from the Ministry of Education.
Mr. Shepherd says the union will be writing the Ministry of Education requesting a meeting to discuss the matter. He says this will be the last time that the union will be pursuing the matter.
We had about 4 or 5 over the years. This problem has been going on for too long, and we cannot continue to meet on Alma Paris and do nothing. Something has to be done out of the meeting, which we are going to be calling for as soon as it is humanly possible.
Mr. Shepherd reiterated that the teachers did not withdraw their labor today. He says the principal, the deputy principal, and 3 members of staff were on hand to supervise the 101 students who were registered today. Attempts to reach Principal Valdez Francis up to news time were unsuccessful. It's also been disclosed that the officials of the BUT are to meet with Education Ministry officials on Friday to discuss the impasse at the school. Well, the Barbados Union of Teachers is reporting a very fruitful meeting with education officials regarding affairs at the Parkinson Memorial School. Top officials met at the Education Ministry this afternoon. President Pedro Shepherd says teachers vented their frustrations in that meeting, which included Permanent Secretary Cecil Humphrey and Chief Education Officer Laurie King. Mr. Shepherd says the education officials have promised to look at the information provided and get back to the union in order to solve the impasse. Well, children or anyone in the vicinity of the isolation centre at Enmore are safe. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Tennyson Springer, gave the assurance during a panel discussion on Ebola and chikungunya at the Ellerslie School last night. He says a center has been constructed according to guidelines set down by the Centers for Disease Control and has been approved by the Pan American Health Organization.
The unit is closed all around. There's a seal and there's an air cooling and treatment system included. Although it is not transmitted by air, we've gone the extra mile to treat any air coming out of the unit. When we designed the unit, it was designed with the full input of PAHO, Pan American Health Organization, both local and in the Washington office.
Mr. Springer says they've also taken extra precautions to ensure that security is top priority.
The Ministry of Health has taken the decision that we are also going to add an additional security fence around the unit, and the area is well lit and we have cameras in the area. So the area is pretty secure. And if a patient is in there tomorrow, we're going to have actual manpower securing the area. There's absolutely no way the students can be affected by the unit unless you breach the security perimeter. First one, which is this, the school's fence. The second one, which is around the unit, and come in and touch a patient.
He also explains the decision not to treat any other infectious diseases at the Enmore.
We understand that Ebola is not just the disease. The disease is Ebola plus fear. There's a major international fear going around in relation to this disease. Even in New York, people who work in units with Ebola are shunned in the supermarket, in the drugstores, on the streets. People are that fearful. So I understand the fear associated with managing this condition, but Barbados is a one-by-one country in terms of size, and this unit has to be close to something.
Well, environmental health specialist Ronald Chapman was one of the panelists at that discussion. He says despite speculation to the contrary, chikungunya is spread by the Aedes aegypti mosquito, and he says it is certainly not airborne. Mr. Chapman says one of the reasons for this belief is how quickly chikungunya is spread, which is due to the amount of virus the mosquito carries in its body.
Every time it pushes its mouth parts into you, it releases a small amount of saliva. That saliva is to stop your blood from clotting so that the mosquito can feed properly. It is that saliva that contains the large amount of virus. So every time that mosquito probes you, it injects a large amount of virus, the amount of virus necessary for you to become ill.
Mr. Chapman also explains why entire households have been coming down with the virus.
Barbadians will see a mosquito and they will fly over there and clap at it. It will fly and go away and it will come back. And then they will see the mosquito down by their foot flying around. By that time, that mosquito would have landed on you and started the probing process. You might have moved your foot or something. The mosquito did not take a full blood meal, but it has already passed the virus on to you, and it goes to somebody else in the house. So we've been finding whole households coming down with signs and symptoms of chikungunya because an infected mosquito did not get a full blood meal from one person, and it flies and it nips everyone in the house.
Prime Minister Frindle Stewart is reassuring Barbadians that the island has adequate mechanisms in place should the country be faced with an imported case of Ebola. He says there is a coordinating agency chaired by the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Defense and Security, which is ready to be pressed into action should the needs arise. The Prime Minister says he is pleased with our state of preparedness.
We stakeholders here, the officials here, have been working very, very hard, working around the clock, having their meetings, consulting, making sure that they do their simulation exercises and so on. And by and large, I think that we are reasonably well prepared should we have to deal with anything like this. But as I said, preparedness is not a destination. It's a journey, and you only know how prepared you are when you have to deal with reality.
Mr. Stewart, who has just returned from Port of Spain, says CARICOM's 10-point plan covers everything from equipment and training to strengthening health systems. Mr. Stewart says the IDB has agreed to provide the region with about $7 million to help the response efforts. The Prime Minister says CARICOM leaders understand that they cannot approach the response to Ebola separately, and it must be collectively tackled.
We understand, of course, that people coming into the region, they don't walk in here. They come by cruise ships or they come by airplanes. We have been in contact with the cruise people to get some sense of what precautions they're taking at their level. And we have also been in touch with the airline industry, the industry so far as it affects us here in the Caribbean, to get some sense of where they're going. And we intend to keep that dialogue going so that we are not caught unawares in the event of an impact.
Well, family, friends and scores of politicians turned out at the Democratic Labour Party's George Street Auditorium today to pay their respects to late party stalwart and economist Tennyson Beckles. Lisa Lord reports.
Regarded as one of the island's leading economists, Tennyson Beckles passed away last week at the age of 76. Prime Minister Frando Stewart remembered him as an essential part of the Democratic Labour Party's existence. He says Mr. Beckles was a committed supporter and member of the party for decades.
Tennyson was an intellectual, and by that I mean that he was a man interested in the generation and elucidation of ideas. He loved to discuss ideas. And just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, he and I had a very long conversation on that very question. He was looking at what was going on in the world and trying to make sense of it in terms of the economic theories that have been dominating Western discourse in recent times. So he was a valuable member of the Democratic Labour Party.
Education Minister Ronald Jones says Mr. Beckles was always there to guide young politicians. He regarded him as a pillar of the party and said he was an active member right up until his death.
He was a person who you can always hear coming at the critical time with the right advice or correct advice to help reorder an organization, because you know organizations this size can have times some testy moments, and he was always that voice of sanity which would keep us all focused on what the tasks are, what the missions are.
Mr. Beckles' funeral service will take place at the Church of St. John the Baptist in St. James on Friday. Lisa Lord.
We'll have more news ahead, but first we want your take on this question. Do you believe the Scotiabank job cuts will impact Barbados? Text yes or no to the short code 8111. Those results at the end of the news.
The Barbados Food and Wine and Rum Festival, November 20th to 23rd. Taste the culinary delights of top local and international chefs like Marcus Samuelson and Burrell, Tyler Florence, Roger Mooking, Michael Hines, Dane Sadler, Daphne's Restaurant, and more. The Barbados Food and Wine and Rum Festival, 5th edition, November 20th to 23rd. Visit foodwinerum.com or contact Premier Event Services Inc. at 435-0670. Get your tickets now at WineWorld or TicketPal.com.
Happy is the child that has his own. And you can have your own MCTV this Independence. It's easy. No activation fee, no installation fee. Just pay the first month of the package of toys and MCTV's your own with the most affordable package options and over 100 channels. Make MCTV your own. Sign up today. Special conditions apply. MCTV, the right choice.
Ebola is a rare and often deadly disease. If you have traveled to an area where the virus has been reported, monitor your health for 21 days after returning and call your doctor if you experience fever, headache, achiness, sore throat, diarrhea, vomiting, stomach pain, rash or red eyes. Before you go to the doctor or emergency room, tell your doctor about your recent travels and any symptoms. Ebola. Know the facts.
Two men in their 20s and a juvenile are in police custody tonight. They're assisting with investigations into a chopping incident that occurred at Warren's St. Michael about 10 minutes to 1 this afternoon. That incident reportedly involved a man in his 30s and 3 coconut vendors. According to Acting Police Public Relations Officer, Acting Station Sergeant Roland Cobbler, the man reportedly sustained lacerations to his right foot and left hand. He was taken to the hospital by ambulance for treatment. Well, contractors who will work on the Barbados Water Authority and IDB's $28 million mains replacement project recently received a briefing on what will be expected of them. The meeting and contract signing took place at the authority's Manor Lodge St. Michael headquarters. The contractors will be responsible mainly for excavation, backfilling and reinstatement. Project manager in the BWA's Capital Works unit, Charles Leslie, brought them up to speed.
With any project of this size, we're installing mains that serve communities, and the mains basically go through the communities. And on this particular project, we will be crossing from one side of the road to the other in order to, to wind the main through the different communities. As a consequence, some of the roadways will get damaged. So I wanted to emphasize with the contractors that they have to pay special attention to the reinstatement of those roadways as close as possible to the original state.
Mr. Leslie says they will be getting started as soon as possible, adding that the project time is short.
We have done mobilization already. We have started to move a number of our pipes from the Bell Pumping Station stockyard to a laydown yard that we have at 4 Square. And that basically is to allow us to move a lot faster because we have a very short timeline to get the mains installed. We're installing approximately just over 12 kilometers of main, and that has been done in a period of 7 months.
Another appeal has been made for business people to put strict cash handling procedures in place. It comes from Crime Prevention Officer in the Royal Barbados Police Force, Station Sergeant Stephen Griffith. He told CBC News lawmen are still seeing people counting cash at the front counters at their establishments.
I want to call out to directors, managers, supervisors to look at the cash handling policies of their particular company and their firms and ensure that their staff are following best practices and following that policy to the letter. I want to also say to those small business people who sometimes do the same thing, that they have to put a cash management policy in place. You cannot continue to treat the criminal activity because it affects not only your safety, but the safety of the customers.
Station Sergeant Griffith says business people should use the professional services to transfer cash from their premises at the end of the day. He also says there should never be a predictable way of handling cash. Regional news next, but first a reminder that we'd like to